In a quiet land long ago, under a vast and endless sky, a man stood alone with his thoughts. He was faithful. He was obedient. Yet his heart carried a heavy question. That man was Abram. On this night, God would make a promise so powerful that it would shape history forever. This is the story of God's covenant with Abram. From Genesis chapter 15, a story about faith, fear, waiting, and a promise that only God could keep. Abram had already obeyed God many times. He left his homeland. He trusted God in battles. He walked by faith, not by sight. But now, after a great victory, fear crept in. Then the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." God knew Abram's heart, but Abram finally spoke the question he had carried for so long. "O Lord God, what can you give me? Since I remain childless, the heir of my house is my servant." Abram wasn't doubting God's power. He was struggling with God's timing. Years had passed. The promise of descendants still felt so distant, so impossible. It was a moment of raw human honesty. God answered Abram with incredible clarity. "This man will not be your heir. A son who comes from your own body will be your heir." Then God did something truly unforgettable. He led Abram outside, under the night sky. Imagine that moment. The air is still, and above them stretches a brilliant tapestry of countless twinkling stars. God said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars. Indeed, you can count them. So shall your offspring be." Abram looked up. The stars were beyond number. They were beyond human logic, beyond what he could possibly comprehend. And in that moment, Abram believed God. The Bible tells us something powerful. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. It wasn't about Abram being perfect. It was about his faith. That simple act of trust was what God honored. But God wasn't finished. He said, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur to give you this land." Abram, seeking reassurance, asked another honest question. "How can I know that I will gain possession of it?" God responded not with words, but with an ancient, solemn ceremonial covenant. He told Abram to bring several animals and prepare them in a specific way, as was the custom for making a binding agreement in those times. As night approached, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and then a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. In this state, God revealed the future. He told Abram that his descendants would be strangers in a foreign land. They would be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But God also promised that he would judge that nation and bring his people out with great wealth. God was honest about the coming hardship, yet he was absolutely firm about their ultimate deliverance. Then something extraordinary happened. As Abram watched in his vision, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch passed between the pieces of the animals. In ancient covenants, both parties involved would walk through the pieces. This symbolized their mutual responsibility. If either broke the deal, they would face a fate like the divided animals. But here, only God walked through it. The fire pot and torch represented God's own holy presence. This meant the covenant did not depend on Abram's strength, his obedience, or his perfection. It depended entirely on God's faithfulness. God was essentially saying, if this promise ever fails, let the consequence fall on me. And God never fails. The entire weight of the promise rested on his shoulders alone. That night, God officially made the covenant. He promised Abram's descendants the land, defining the borders from the river of Egypt all the way to the great Euphrates. Nations were named. The future was sealed. Abram did not yet see the fulfillment of this promise. He wouldn't live to see the nation or the land. But the promise itself was already secure, guaranteed by God himself. Genesis 15 reminds us of something so profound. God's promises are not limited by our human timelines. Our faith doesn't require us to have all the answers, and a period of waiting doesn't mean God is silent or absent. Abram believed before he saw the proof, and God proved himself faithful, not just for a generation, but for all generations to come. So when you look up at the stars tonight, remember this story. Remember Abram, the same God who counted those stars, the same God who made that unbreakable promise, is the same God who keeps his promises to you today. Thank you for watching. If this story encouraged you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the depths of faith. We'll see you in the next video.